Hello, everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of The War Room, part of the Clone Star podcast. This week, I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Sho Sefeli. Sho, how are you, sir?
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Now, this week, we are extremely honored to have one of my favorite characters of Deep Space Nine on the show. But this man, who is also an educator, a stage actor, director, author, movie and TV actor, a massive with a massive filmography of work under his belt, and we know him best as his magnificent performance of the enigmatic Elim Garak on Deep Space Nine. We are delighted to be joined by the incredible Andrew Robinson. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, that's a thank you for that intro. Wow. God, I feel more interesting than I've realized. So
No, not at all. I think to be fair, whilst we were doing some of the research, or well, I have to say, when Show was doing some of the research and I was going through it, you've actually had quite an interesting career. I think going back looking at it with a lot of theatre work and
I'm
then
pretty
obviously,
sure, like every 1980s TV show I ever watched, you were a guest star at some point
God,
across all of them.
indeed I did. Oh boy. Oh man,
And
man.
Andy,
A
going all the
misspent youth.
back, where did the love of acting come from?
Oh, I don't know. It's like God. It's a strange thing because it only is in my later years that I realized what an oddball career this. I mean, profession. The career. I'm very fortunate. I mean, really. I mean, I just set out in this career just hoping that I could make a living, and I could live on a nickel. I mean, I came from very modest, poor circumstances, and so I learned how to, you know, stretch a buck. And so I figured, well, I don't have to be rich and famous. I can just make enough money to pay the rent and the food. Um, but I've been, I'm continually grateful for the body of work that has amassed, and for the characters. These characters like Garak. Garak changed my life playing this character, and there are other roles, obviously, that were incredibly vital to me. And remembering that, I've done over 100 stage plays, either acting or directing, and that's sort of like the soul of my work. That informs everything I do, in whatever medium. Um,
And, and like back when you started in the theater in the 1960s, like what was kind of some of the roles you were kind of drawn to? Like what were some of the performances you really kind of felt that actually, wait a second, I'm actually quite good at this?
yeah, it was when I got out of drama school. I got a Fulbright scholarship to study in England at the same school that Sid, studied at Lambda. Which was, you talk about a godsend. That truly did change my life. Um, and at the time, it was an amazing school with great teachers. And so when I got, excuse me, when I got out of there and went back to New York, I had really no idea what to do. And so at the time, there were a lot of repertory theaters throughout the country, and every summer, the artistic directors would come to New York, and there would be this massive audition. This one was down in Sheridan Square in the Village, the West Village. Um, and so I went there and I did my two little monologues and got a couple jobs. And I chose to go to this place, the Milwaukee Rep. And so and from that point, for the next couple of years, I just went to, towns like Milwaukee or Cincinnati, Providence, um, all these rep companies that, I don't even think they exist. Well, Milwaukee does, but a lot of these reps don't exist anymore, which is sad,
Mm.
because a lot of actors in my generation, that's how we began, always with the goal of going to New York, because that's where I was born. That's where, my family, or a lot of my family, was from. Um, but it was in to answer your question, it was in during these periods at these repertory theaters well, as I was doing plays, that's when I thought, well, Christ, I'm a professional now. I'm making the, you know, the princely sum of $50 a week. Um, and but it was doing these plays.
Yeah.
And I was doing this Saroyan play, The Time of Your Life. And it was in that play that an actor, this woman, Mary Doyle, fabulous actor, as I was about ready to make an entrance one night, she turned to me because I adored her. I so revered her. She turned to me and she said, "You know, Andy, you're very good in this." And then she turned away and it was time for me to go on. And I almost cried when she said that,
Ah.
because it was like, you know, it was such a validation. It was just one of those moments you just never forget. But then, you know, as I did more and more plays, and I did a lot of plays for the first, you know, several years of you know, when I started. You just start, you know, you develop that muscle,
Yep.
that and not just the memory muscle, which exists, but it's the imaginative muscle where you just drop yourself into the play and trust your imagination, trust your instincts.
And like when you were kind of doing these plays, at what point did you kind of say, maybe I can give TV, maybe I can give movies a
Never.
go? Is that it?
No, TV and movies, that was for these people lived on another planet. They were out in this place called California. I really I loved movies. When I was a kid, I just went to movies all the time. I sneaked into as many movie houses as I possibly could. I really knew films, but I just thought that's not me.
Hmm.
You know, that's for people who I guess do that sort of thing or train for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't until I did Dirty Harry, and that came as such a fluke. I got that role. I mean, you know, but everything happens like how it happens, and it's a mystery.
How did
Uh,
it come about, Andy?
well, I was working. You see, I ended up with my own predilection for madness. Um, I ended up working downtown in New York in experimental theater.
Hmm.
I love that. That's what really, you know, satisfied me. You know, I got fired from an off-Broadway play, and I thought, well, shit, I don't want to do these fucking plays, you know, and then, you know, sort of like cross a line in which I'm not supposed to cross and then get fired.
Do I
And
dare
then,
ask Andy why you were fired?
oh, I was fired because they wanted me to. I refused to take a direction, and then I behaved very badly. I did some things I'm not proud of, and so I threw the director against the wall. And
Oh,
um,
right.
yeah, that's not a good thing to do, and I'm not proud of it at all. But that's anyway. So yeah, but then I found my place in downtown theater, and there was a young man that I knew and I had worked with occasionally and so forth. And his father was a film director, Don Siegel.
Hmm.
And I had no idea, you know, who his father was. And it was really odd because I I don't know how I got the audition, and I stepped into the office with Don Siegel, and he said to me, he says, "Okay, so my son tells me that you're the best actor in New York." And I laughed. I said, "Oh, wow, well, yeah, I think there are a few people in front of me in that line, but thanks." And then he said, "Okay, well, nice to meet you." And I figured, "Oh, okay, that's it, that's fine." I was doing a play at the time, and a couple of weeks later, Clint Eastwood came to the play. And this is a little theater, a very little theater down in Astor Place. And then he came to see the play and said, "Okay, yeah, I like the guy. Let's hire him."
Oh my
And but it
words.
was like it was like I was like Alice in Wonderland. I went out to do this play in San Francisco, and it was like, what? Wow, this is something. Look at all these people, lugging camera equipment and shit like that. And my God, it's I had no idea. I hadn't a clue what I'd gotten myself into.
And what was the experience of making Dirty Harry like then? Obviously, you've gone from a situation where you've been doing plays and you've been reading, kind of enjoying that. You're going into this situation where you're in a high profile movie, you're playing the bad guy in it. What was the experience like?
Experience was great because the director, and it turns out he was a brilliant director. I mean, you just look up his filmography. It's like this man was brilliant. He's the best director film director I've ever worked with. And he got me. He got who I was, and he knew that he would get stuff out of me if he didn't try to put me in a little box and give me a lot of direction. That wasn't his style.
Hmm.
His style was, I hired you, you're the actor, so you should know what the hell you're going to do. And once he explained to me what filmmaking was, it's a very brilliant but simple explanation. He explained to me when I would try to talk to him about psychological shit and stuff like that. He said, no, don't bother me with that. He said, here's the frame. In this frame, everything happens in this frame. All the action, you go from A to B to C to D, and then you leave the frame, and then it's over for you. And it just opened me up. And so I began within the frame to just go for it. And of course, that character was insane. So yeah, and how the hell do you play someone who is absolutely homicidal and insane like that? And it was like it was creepy and it was weird, but it was so much fun to go to that place and to really dive into it. So I just gave it my all, and everybody loved what I was doing. And he would just let me go, and this was quite unusual for him, because he did not let actors go like that. And so it ended. It was great. I made at the time I thought was a ton of money. I think they paid me $1,000 a week for 8 weeks, which we were able to live on that for over a year.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that then they had me come back to do some looping, where you do a sound, where they're getting their soundtrack together.
Yeah.
And so I came back to Los Angeles, and Don Siegel, the director, said to me, "Listen, I'd like you to see this, a rough cut of it." So I said, fine. So I went to a screening room at Warner Brothers, or Universal, I can't remember which, and then I sat down, I watched the rough cut of this, and I couldn't believe it. And it scared me. It really did scare me, because this was not my self-image at all.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe watching what I was seeing in this creature, this
Did it feel like a
insane.
kind of an out of body experience? Like you were
It
looking
was
at
out of
yourself on
body.
the screen, but you're there going, but that's not me. I couldn't do what this man is doing.
It wasn't, but at the same time, show, I was proud as hell. I thought, this is fucking good work, because I believe this.
Yeah.
I believe this. I am not faking this,
Yeah.
But and then it was a great experience. And just to put a capper on this, after it came out, I mean, of course, everybody thought it was, Jesus, you're really great in this, but I don't ever want to work with you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're a really good actor or if you're really insane. And it kind of like then, people just did not want to meet me.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of meetings, they thought this is, this is some kind of specialty act, and this guy is some sort of like psychotic that somehow Don Siegel managed to put into the film. So I I did another film with Don Siegel, Charlie Varick with Walter Matthau, which was another wonderful experience. But then but basically I just went back to theater. I thought, well, that's it. I'm not going to do this anymore.
Did you
But then television, those shows that you mentioned earlier, they needed an asshole of the week. And who was going to show them their asshole, like old Rob.
Is that printed? Please tell me that's printed on your business card or something.
That's
Andrew Robson, asshole of the week.
That's right. But it's then I started I got some death threats and all kinds of weird people coming up to me in the street and all these weaselly weird guys, and it was always guys who'd come up to me and quote Clint's last line about "Do you feel lucky, punk?" and shit like that. And I thought, I'm out of here.
I don't need this in my life.
This. But now I feel like, I'm so happy I did the film and put up with all that bullshit after.
And so at this point now, you've kind of done Dirty Harry, you've kind of gone back predominantly to the stage. Was it just kind of the, say, odd TV appearances as the asshole of the week that you were kind of saying, this is fine, I'll do this, but my main life is on the stage?
I quit though after a while because it got tiresome.
Yeah.
It really, and I was doing an episode of The A-Team. And it was another one of those roles and bad, a mediocre script and we had this little cabin up in the mountains, and I came home and I said, Irene, I'm quitting. I want to leave LA and let's get out of here. And we did. And each of us had our reasons, because our daughter Rachel was with us as well. And so I quit the business and we went to this, live in this little town in the mountains about 3 hours from here. And it was the greatest thing, the greatest decision I ever made. It really was, because I managed to pull myself together, and also as a family, we managed to pull ourselves together. And after about 5 years, I thought, why not? We'll come back. And again, there were other reasons for coming back, but I thought I'm ready to come back and do this business again. And it was it was good. It was a good choice to get out of here and sort of get some perspective on what this is all about.
I was about to ask you, did you get the perspective when you kind of pulled away from it for a while? Andy, am I right in reading, did you audition for the role of Decker on Star Trek The Motion Picture?
Yes, I did. And it came down to me and Steven. And I was so disappointed that when I thought I had gotten the role.
Yeah.
And found out in a very strange circumstance that, I was doing a show, this Barnaby Jones show, and I was working with this friend of mine, Larry Luckenbill. And I told Larry, I said, listen, Larry, I think I just got a movie, this Star Trek movie. And he said, oh, yeah? Yeah, what? And I told him what the character was. And he looked at me because he was a friend of Stephen Collins. He said,
no.
Andy, I said, I don't think you got the role. And I said, no.
Of all the ways to find out as well.
Oh, I know. I mean, it was such a bummer, Anyway.
And Larry, of course, was in Star Trek 5 then, only a couple of years later.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, my word. So when you were doing your screen test for the motion picture, were you reading with, say, Shatner or whoever, or was it just kind of in front of the producers, whoever?
No. See, the thing is that, what's his name? The director, he's an old-timey guy.
Robert Wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's done some film noir films that I love. And so these old-time directors, they really didn't do. I mean, they went by meetings. That's how I got the job, with Dirty Harry, and so if in the meeting, if they wanted to realize that's how they hired you. Now, nowadays it's like everything is a screen test, or you go on video, or you talk in your phone and make faces and send it in. Which, by the way, I've never gotten a job. Never gotten a job where I'm on my phone. I say, okay, all right, Joe, stick him up. Yeah, I mean, It's so goddamn.
Andy, question for you then. This is always a question that I kind of preface it as the Adam Driver question. Do you find it hard to watch your own work back?
Yeah, 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 of course. And that's a legitimate phenomenon. I mean, it's you because you're inside the work, and when you're doing it, you're inside it, and then suddenly you're outside it and looking at it, and especially with my theatrical orientation, that I like, for instance, I just finished a play 2 weeks ago, and you finish it and it's over. And you don't hear anything more about it. You don't see anything more about it. You have reactions. There are people who went there and they wrote their reviews, and you have friends and family and people who had their opinions and whatever, but that's it. It's that performance of that ended 2 weeks ago remains inside me. That's whereas, with the film and television, suddenly there it is. And you're thinking, and most of the time it's like, well, not most of the time, all the time, it's not at all what I had literally imagined. It's something else. And plus all the things that you don't like about yourself, there it is, magnified.
Would you find it easier then to watch something like Garak, for example, where
Yes.
it's when you're in the
Yes.
makeup, it's harder to see that it's yourself?
Yes.
Right.
Good question, man. Good question, Michael. Absolutely. It's so much easier. And in an odd way, too, it's easier to act.
Right. Okay.
I mean, there is a freedom. When you put that mask on, I mean, it's like, oh, nobody can really see me, and which is kind of perfect for Garak. Nobody can see me. Nobody knows what I'm thinking about. Nobody knows what I feel about them, my opinions. And so I can say any fucking thing I want to,
Yep.
And they're not going to know any better, true or false or whatever. But you're absolutely right about that. It was liberating, and it was so much fun. And plus the writing was superb.
Yeah.
They wrote for that. They wrote for that kind of character.
And Andy, do you prefer being, I think I know the answer to this one, but like, do you prefer being on stage or on the screen?
Oh, on stage. Absolutely. There's no question about that.
Like how?
I mean, I've given some wonderful performances on screen. There's no question. And a lot of stuff like, and these odd little gems, like there was a Kojak that I did with Ruth Gordon, which I thought was amazing. There are these, but still, it's like you're in charge. You own the stage. You're in charge. The theater, the play belongs to the actor. It doesn't even belong to the writer anymore. It certainly doesn't belong to the director. When you're on stage in real time, it belongs to you.
I'm conscious that in every episode we do, Andy, we always have a habit of aging ourselves. And I'm conscious of the fact that we've mentioned the A-Team, Barnaby Jones, and Kojak. And I remember watching all of these as a kid. Yep. And they're going, so many people in our audience going, what the hell is Kojak? And they're going, nobody knows Telly Savalas, and nobody knows about the lollipop and all that kind of thing.
No. I know.
And Andy, what brought you to wanting to become an educator as well?
Because I've always been a bit of a pedant, and I'm an English major, and insufferable in that way. Dot your I's, cross your T's, use punctuation, speak clearly in complete sentences, and that bullshit. I can't help it. That's it's but I'm also a theater rat. I really do. I love thinking about acting and talking about acting and writing about acting, because it's such an amazing thing. It's such a deceptive process. People think they know what acting is, and it's a profound. It has a profound obligation and the obligation is that you and Shakespeare said it, you are to represent the human being, and you're to find the depths of what it means to be a human being, because nothing is more mysterious than what is a human being. Um, what is it that makes a human being, and the dimensions of our humanity, and all that is in acting. So, but the funny thing is and I loved working with kids. I started out teaching, but with little kids. My daughter Rachel would go to these schools, elementary schools, and so forth, and they had no art at these schools. There was no art classes and no art curriculum. And so I'd go to these places. I said, well, listen, and I can do acting classes with these kids, and do theater games and stuff like that. And that kind of grew. And then a friend of mine who was the dean of the School of Theater at the University of Southern California said, listen, we're looking for someone to create a master's program in acting. And I turned her down. I said, no, I said, there are already too many actors in the world. I don't want to what am I going to do? Teach these, you set up a master's program for people when they get out of it, there are no jobs for them. I mean, what the hell? But then I thought about it, and Irene and I, we really talked about it a lot. And I said, it doesn't have to be just about acting. I mean, just about acting technique. I mean, because the thing is, you can't teach acting. The acting is, you can teach technique. You can work on the voice. You can work on your voice, your body, and make your body flexible and responsive and so forth. But I mean, to teach acting, what does that mean? It doesn't. It's absolutely meaningless. So I said yes. And for, I don't know, 15, 16 years, this swallowed my life, but I loved it. And I wrote this book, which I haven't even tried to get it published. I sent it to one English publisher, and they were clueless. They had no idea what I was writing about. And shit, I can't put up with this. They send it to people who are in the business.
Oh yes, those people. Yes,
peer review.
Yeah.
Peer review. That's what they call it. And so I got these peer reviews from people who hadn't a fucking clue. They hadn't a clue what I was talking about. And I thought, oh, I just can't do this. I can't do this. So I put it in a drawer, but that was fine because, because the people who want that information, I'll give it to them. But
and like in terms of, say, when you're kind of working with actors and even college and all that kind of thing, what are some of the important pieces of advice that you give them? So obviously you said about like how to your voice and your kind of using your body. What are some of the other bits of advice that you always kind of try to impart to people? Don't worry, we were having a very interesting conversation about what energy provider we use and how much our bills are every month, Andy. That's the kind of conversation we have nowadays.
Oh my God, it's like, oh God, life can be so complicated.
Yep.
It seems to me, I thought at my age that things would get simpler, and they've only gotten. I think the closer you come to death, though, that's when you really you sort of like, if you're not focused. And if you're not aware of what's happening, you can really get into a lot of trouble. Anyway, but that's a whole other conversation.
We'll save that one for dinner sometime.
See, I don't know. I'm destroying your program anyway. Okay,
not at all. Like this is magical, Andy. This is what we want. Like we had J.G. Hertzler on the show only a couple of weeks ago.
He's the best.
Brilliant. He's absolutely mad as a loon. Like I may as well just ask him one. I may as well just ask him one question. Just let it go after that because he's a completely wonderful stream of consciousness.
I so love that man. I do indeed.
Oh, he's magnificent. So, like I said, all the nonsense we love on this show as well. Like we try
Yep.
to make it a safe space to completely go mad whichever way you want to go. So don't worry about it all, Andy.
Thank you.
So where we were asking you then, what are some of the most important pieces of advice you give to new actors coming through?
You know, it's about courage. It really is. As I said, I can't teach anyone to use their imagination. I can help them. There are devices, there are tools, there are exercises in which you use to, leverage your imagination with that will help you trust your intuition more, that inner voice that tells you really what's going on. And that is the greatest teacher. Um, so that's but it's about courage and making that leap of faith, because it's all about leaps of faith.
Yeah.
And making choices, and the more courage you have, the more interesting your choices are, as an artist. If you're timid about making your choices, and you're timid about, what other people are going to think, which is a very common thing. I mean,
Mhm.
and a lot of people want to be liked, and that's a killer. I mean, it's not everybody likes you, and that's the way it should be. I mean, the people who don't like you are the people. You 9 times out of 10, you wouldn't have shine your shoes. I mean, it's like, you just have to make choices and move ahead, and it's the whole thing about moving ahead, and basically that's it. I mean, obviously it's all wrapped up in classes, and your voice class. The voice is so important, and getting the right voice teacher was the first thing I did, right, when I was teaching, when I was running the program. And of course, because my orientation is very physical, and the work that I was doing downtown in New York, before I did Dirty Harry, and even after, when I did Dirty Harry, I was still working downtown, and working, basically there was this Polish director, brilliant man, Jerzy Grotowski, and was working with his. He had this whole physical approach to acting, which was extraordinary. It still is extraordinary. But yeah, that's what I did. I could not. I hate studio classes where you go to class and there's a teacher and you do scenes. And maybe you'll work once a month if you're lucky, because of the rotation of doing the scenes. And for the most part, you're watching, other people work, which is okay. And if it's a good teacher who's making, intelligent, smart observations, then that's fine. But still, you're sitting on your ass and you're just watching other people and listening to blah, blah.
Mm.
And whereas with my classes were 3 hours long, my core class, and everybody was on their feet all the time. And that's the way, that's how I worked, and how I did my best work, and how I learned the most when I was a young man.
And Andy, in terms of your TV actor, stage director, you've directed some episodes of TV as well. You've directed, say, an episode of DS9, 2 episodes of Voyager. When you were doing those episodes, did you remember those words from Don Siegel about what goes on in the frame and not to worry about anything else
Yes,
outside
yes,
of
I
it?
did. I did.
And how did you enjoy doing those, like the episodes of directing? And was it something you wish you'd been able to do more?
At the beginning, it was agonizing because it was learning an entirely different way of working. And it was a hard slog. But then I started getting good at it when I finished doing. I didn't do many episodes of Star Trek, but I worked as a staff director on this show that a friend of mine produced called Judging Amy.
Mhm.
And it was a good show, well written, and with wonderful actors. And I started getting really good. The thing about directing directing television these days is that it's the writer producer who is the power. And you sit, it's no longer, it's no longer the director sitting in his director's chair watching the actors work on a stage set. The director now sits behind a bank of monitors and watches people on the monitors. And behind you, as you're sitting there watching the monitors, behind you, the writer producers are standing there, and they're in not all of them, but they're giving you their opinion. Aren't you going to cover, the opposite, the reverse there? Are you going to let her do that? And so forth. And the director really is just there to direct traffic,
Right.
really. So, but because I knew about acting, my strength was working with actors, and that was I love that. I've always loved that as a director. But I did not like having people looking over my shoulder and second guessing my choices.
This is like
So,
having a backseat driver all the time, isn't it?
yeah, it really is, and so I wasn't in a position, of of being a Scorsese or a Spielberg, where I'm the one, I have the first word and the last word, which I have when I'm doing theater, and I prefer that,
So after the episodes of Judging Amy, did you just kind of say, right, that's it. This is not the freedom I want to do in a kind of a
No, it
role
was the
like this?
Judging Amy was wonderful because I was protected by the guy who was the producer, who was the executive producer, because he and I were theatrical partners as well, and Joe Stern, and I loved Joe, and Joe loved me, and we worked. But then I realized I wouldn't survive I wouldn't last long. I mean, I would just get into arguments and become a pain in the ass. And who wants to work with a pain in the ass? So.
And Andy, also we asked about you auditioning for Decker. Did you also audition for Odo?
Yes, I did. That's basically how I got to Garak, because I went into audition for Odo 3 times. Came down to Renee, who got the job, rightfully so, Garrett Graham, and myself, and Renee got the role, and then the next week, or it was at the most 2 weeks later, they called me up and they wanted me to come in to read for an episode, and I said, "What, an episode? What?" I said, "You just saw me 3 fucking times. Why do I have to come in again?" And I said, "No, I'm not coming in. You saw me 3 times. I came into the office. I gave you, my auditions, whatever." And I said, "I'm not going." And then Irene heard me, and she said, "People, the phone is not ringing off the hook, and we do have bills to pay." And I said, "Okay, all right." So I went in, and I'm so, I mean, I can't imagine. I just can't imagine if my life without having done Garak. I mean, really, because that was so important to me.
And when you auditioned for Odo, Andy, I suppose, how different was your approach to what Renee eventually kind
Oh,
of
who
put
the
out?
hell knows? Jesus. I mean, who the hell? Who remembers that fucking audition?
Well, you went 3 times, Andy, so I thought you'd
I know
remember
3
it.
times. No, but the thing is, what happens, Joe, is that you work with Renee, and you get Renee is doing his version, and certainly I didn't do that, but as far as I'm concerned, that's Odo.
Yeah.
So whatever my ideas about Odo have long gone. I mean,
And had you been a Star Trek fan over the
no,
years? Okay,
no,
right. Straight out, no.
I never even watched the original series. And the thing is, and then when I got hired to play a Cardassian, I didn't know, what the hell is a Cardassian? I've never played an alien in my life,
To be honest, I
No
think not many people
clue.
knew what a Cardassian was because they'd only been on screen a few times. So,
Well, that's right. I mean, it was David Warner
yep,
torturing Picard, and
Mhm.
and then Mark Alimo
yeah.
doing
Yeah.
his Gul Dukat thing, with his long neck.
So hang on a second. How well did you get on with Mark when the cameras were off?
Oh, I always got along with him. I mean, he's as bent as Dick's hat band, but I mean, I love Mark. I really do. I hope he's well. I haven't seen him in years.
Yeah. My fiance and myself were sitting down about a couple of weeks ago, and an episode of Knight Rider was on, and I decided I'm going to watch this, and I suddenly was there going, "Wow, there's Mark Alamo playing the bad guy," and I said, "I never thought I'd see Gul Dukat getting run over by Kit at any point in my
Yeah, right, right, right.
When you were creating the role of Garak, then Andy, how much input did you have with the writers, or what was the original brief of the character? Was he just to be in a couple of
No,
episodes?
the writers, they're Ira and his guys. I mean, they're wonderful. I mean, and really good writers. So I mean, basically, I mean, I was just grateful for, I was so happy when a script would show up, and I always trusted it. The only scripts I didn't like were, and that was simply because they were the alternate universe scripts,
Mhm.
where Garrick is just like another one of those assholes that I played in the 70s. No subtext. There's,
Yeah.
no bottom line. There was nothing but I mean, it's so that was, but I know I had no once. The only one time Armin Shimmerman and I had a terrible time with the scene. We couldn't figure out. I can't remember what it ended up being called, the root beer scene. And
Oh, yeah, I
Oh,
know
I
the
know
one.
which one it is. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
episode it is. Yeah.
yeah.
yeah,
And so that's the only time we said, listen, please send the writer down. And Ira came down with, I can't remember who was the writer for that particular, and we thrashed it out and finally worked it out, but that was the only time. The writers rarely came down, and we all had a lot of respect, for the text, for the written words.
And like, did you think, say, when the character started, that that he would have lasted 7 years in the show? And it was really surprising to me is when I looked at it, you were only in 37 episodes of Deep Space
39.
Nine. 39. Well, I'll have to
Yep.
correct the internet for that there now. That's fine.
Right.
Just update that there in my notes and write
yep.
that down now.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
IMDb says 37.
Well, that's
Oh,
absolutely wrong. And that's like it
Maybe
seems
they're
like
right. Maybe they're right. I don't know why 39 sticks in my head.
well, we're going to
it's
take the 39 because, to be honest with you, 37 or 39 doesn't feel like enough.
Well, Mike, it was because, given the nature of Garrick's character, and the mystery about him, and that's the thing that people love. People love the mystery. They love the ambiguity of the man. If he were to show up, for instance, somebody said you should have been a regular, that would have been great. My bank account would have loved that, But I mean, but the thing is, if Garrick showed up every week, then he's just, whoa, there's Garrick.
Yeah.
It's like that's the shirt that I wear. I mean, people love the idea, and I find this. I found this out by going to conventions. They thought it was a real extra treat when they found out that this was an episode with Garrick.
Yeah.
And I felt the same way.
But also, if I feel like Garrick was in more than 37 or 39 episodes.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
But I suppose when it's your favorite character, you play on it more, don't you?
He permeated the
Yes.
universe.
Yeah. He was there subconsciously.
That's
like
right.
I was watching a lot of the season 2 episodes recently, and like there's so much kind of stories with Garrick in them, and like you're left at the end of it going, what in the hell was true in any of that? And it's
Yeah.
like it's like such, it's a wonderful game that's there. It's like it's constantly kind of a lie waiting for someone to try and ask the question, so you can kind of go, ah, you don't need to know the answer to that and things like that. So Andy, I suppose the question is, how much of you is in Garak and how much of Garak is in you?
Oh, okay. Now that's a question that people. It's all me.
Yeah.
It's all me. But the writing is the writers.
Yeah.
So it's no different from, Shakespeare. If I'm playing Caliban, or if I'm playing, Richard III, something like that, I put on a humpback, and I walk around with a limp or something like that. But it's me. It's me. I mean, the words on a page are words on a page, no matter, I mean, it's really wonderful if the words are good and actable and active, but they're words on a page. That's all they are. They it doesn't exist until I say these words, until I embody these words. So it's all me, written by William Shakespeare or Ira Bear. It's that, and there's no secret to that. There's no such person as Hamlet. There's no such person as Garrick.
Do you
Although,
have any? I kind of want to say, I suppose it's a bit difficult now because it was such a long time ago. But are there any phrases or lines that still stick with you today?
All of them.
All of them.
So many. I mean, and then people will come up at a convention and quote a line to me, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I forgot about that. That's a great one. I mean, the truth is just a poor excuse for lack of imagination. I mean, shit like that. It's wonderful. It's so wonderful.
There's one that always stuck with me, and I just loved it every time, which was treason, like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder.
That's right. And something, that's the line that somebody came up with. That I was just in Florida on this convention, and somebody quoted that to me. Yeah,
it's a great line. It's
yeah. Listen, I'm going to have to go soon, my dears. I'm sorry. So if you have something that's really compelling, you need to ask.
Yes, we've one last question, Andy, and I'm going to let Mike ask it.
Okay. Andrew Robinson, what does Star Trek mean to you?
Well, it meant nothing to me when I first got the job. It was, as far as I was concerned, it was just another TV show. And quite honestly, what I had seen of the original series, it was kind of tacky in terms of, its production values. But having had the experience of Garak 7 years and going to these conventions and meeting fans, which for the first time in my career, I meet the people who have supported my career, that was quite an eye opener, and it still is. It means everything to me, because it did change my life. Now, what it means to me in terms of, thematically, it's like, I don't know, because it's still a TV show. It's a TV show. The thing about it is that it projects it, humanity 300 or 400 years into the future. And that's kind of cool, because today I wonder how long we are actually going to survive.
Yeah.
Given the bullshit that's going on. And as much as I try to stay sort of a hard-bitten realist, I mean, I do hope that we can survive.
Yeah.
I really do. And but no, it's Star Trek is very important in my life, and I never thought I would say that.
That's awesome. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for being on the show this week. And for everyone watching and listening, you can catch up with more Clone Star Podcast at clonestarpod.com. Until next time, live long and prosper.